Fantasy managers, do not worry. Jamar Chase, Nico Collins, and Amon-Ra St. will all have massive bounce back games this weekend. We reveal our week 2 wide receiver fantasy rankings on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today is Crossover Thursday on the network, and Crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Today, we are going to reveal our wide receiver rankings for week 2. We've already done quarterback and tight end. Vinny took care of running backs on yesterday's show. And now it's time to go through all of our wide receivers and to help you set your lineup. So let's start right at the top. And we're not scared at all about the Bengals offense last week. And we have Jamar Chase right back there at wide receiver 1. And we both also really like T. Higgins again this week. So I have him at wide receiver 10. You have him at wide receiver 13. But plug in both of these guys with no worries at all against the Jaguars at home.
Yeah, the Jaguars' numbers are a little bit misleading because the Panthers couldn't get it done here with Tetairoa McMillan. But now you got to worry about two guys in their coverage with the Jaguars. And Travis Hunter is not out there playing regular snaps at corner. They do have a pretty good player in Tyson Campbell, but still not a match for what Chase and Higgins can do. I also think the Jaguars will have some success moving the ball with Travis Etienne and Brian Thomas Jr. So that's going to make Joe Burrow want to put up some points here in this game. So they'll go back and forth on this one. I'm excited. It's one of those start them if you've got them games in the main spots here. So Chase Brown, Travis Etienne, the receivers, and the quarterbacks. It should be a pretty good game, hopefully. And these teams will light up each other. And that's what we're looking for with the Bengals. We want some shootouts for fantasy. We didn't get it in week 1 against the Browns. I think they make amends this week.
Yeah, I think they get it in week 2 against this Jaguars defense. Excited to see that. Now, we both have CeeDee Lamb at number 2. You have Justin Jefferson at 3. I have him 5. But we are both saying that Nico Collins and A.J. Brown and Amon-Ra St. all of these guys will have nice bounce back weeks in week 2. So I have Nico Collins actually as my wide receiver 3 against the Buccaneers. I know it wasn't a pretty week 1, but I do think they get things going against the Buccaneers defense, and they're at home. And there was only 14 targets to wide receivers last week. Collins still led that group with 5, but I expect him to have to be much more utilized this week. I expect the Buccaneers to be able to put up more offensive points than the Rams did against the Texans, making them have to throw. And then you have A.J. Brown all the way at wide receiver 5, despite him only getting 1 target last week. I'm a little bit lower at wide receiver 14, but I also expect him to have a nice game against the Chiefs.
Yeah, the Chiefs really struggled with all the Chargers receivers, various receivers. Quentin Johnston stretching the field, Ladd McConkey in the middle, Keenan Allen all over the field through the red zone. We know that the passing game was not needed for the Eagles, so they ran over the Cowboys. I think they'll need to use those receivers a little bit more. So they'll try to grease those wheels, Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown in this game. And it could be out of necessity because Patrick Mahomes is going to be relentless in throwing. I think on the Eagles as well, even without having Xavier Worthy or Rashee Rice. So I'm expecting a potentially high-scoring game resembling a lot of what we've seen in the Super Bowl. With Nico Collins, look, the Texans are going to have to throw the ball in this game. If he gets the targets that Drake London got last week against the Buccaneers, he's going to come through. He's just a better all-around receiver than Drake London. So we expect that's going to happen. And I think the Bucs shut down the running game of the Texans and force C.J. Stroud to high volume in this game.
Now, if you have Jackson Smith and Jigba or Puka Nacua, you're super happy after week 1. Both saw a ton of targets, had great production. I have Puka at 4, JSN at number 6. You have Puka at 7 and JSN at number 12. But if you have them, you're plugging them in confidently and excited about their target share. This is where it gets a little bit more difficult. You have Brian Thomas Jr. at number 6. I have Malik Nabers at number 7 with Brian Thomas at 11. But you're much, much lower on Malik Nabers this week at wide receiver 21. I think after week 1 for both of these guys, Nabers and Thomas, we could be a little bit worried about not their usage in the offense. Both got a lot of targets, but the actual like targets that they're getting. I mean, only 5 of Nabers' 12 targets he saw from Russell Wilson were even catchable. He caught all 5, turned into 5 receptions, 71 yards, but 7 targets being uncatchable is not great. And then with Brian Thomas, 7 targets and only has 1 reception for 11 yards. So that's what are you doing with these two guys? And are you nervous about their quarterbacks?
Yeah, I'm a little less nervous about Brian Thomas Jr., but because he did score, they used him in a different capacity running the ball, and that helped, right? That saved his value kind of in week 1. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to get going with Brian Thomas Jr. And look, the Bengals corners, I mean, nothing to worry about. I mean, the Panthers do have one guy, J.C. Horn, who could cause some problems, but I don't think the Bengals have anything like that in the back end. So I think that's great for Brian Thomas Jr. The other thing with Malik Nabers, though, why I have him so low, I'm all the way down to 21. This is not an indictment on Malik Nabers at all. This is an indictment on Russell Wilson. Now, if Jackson Dart was the starting quarterback against Dallas, I would have him in the top 12 without a question. But this is telling you how much I do not have faith in Russell Wilson right now. There's a little bit of a break that they're getting in the game because Jerron Bland looks like he's going to miss some time for the Cowboys. You still have to worry about Trayvon Diggs in coverage. And I don't know. Russell Wilson is a guy that, as we've talked about, is tentative to throw the ball into coverage when somebody's tight on him or they're double teaming, right? There could be a double team with Malik Nabers forcing him to throw elsewhere. So this is more of a Russell Wilson issue, as we've talked about all throughout the preseason in the rankings. This was the biggest concern. If Dart starts, we feel really good about Nabers. So he's a guy right now, trade for him. It's going to be hard to get him later. Go after that Malik Nabers owner right now in your league very hard because he's going to shoot up. Dart is going to start eventually here. So again, jump on him while you can.
Yeah, Dart needs to get in. Russell Wilson looked terrible, and he is terrible for Malik Nabers. At least he's still getting the targets. So you're still plugging in Nabers because he's going to get the targets, and he's good enough to break one off. But yeah, it's going to be a little sketchy until Russell Wilson finally gets benched. Now, Garrett Wilson, great week 1 game with his first game with Justin Fields. 9 targets, 95 yards, and a touchdown. Was the wide receiver 6 on the week, win 19 points and half PPR. And what was great to see is that unlike Nabers and Brian Thomas Jr., Garrett Wilson actually had a ton of good targets going his way. 8 of his 9 targets were catchable for Wilson. He caught all 8 of them. And he had a good game. They looked like a good connection. And we just saw Zay Flowers go off on that Bills defense. So I'm saying for now, Garrett Wilson has to be considered a top 10 guy until we see that connection not work as well.
Yeah, the talent is manifested. He's finally got a quarterback who's willing to throw the ball. They have a good chemistry. You saw that in this game. Look, all the way down to the last play. I think the Steelers were a bit fortunate. Jalen Ramsey made a fantastic play there late in the game. But again, Ramsey and Wilson won the matchup when he was getting that shot last week. So he showed you how talented he is. And this matchup here against the Bills got roasted by Zay Flowers. So this is really good opportunity here for him to stay hot. And then Marvin Harrison Jr., I got to bring him up. And we said he was one of the better draft values. I think it's the case with both these guys. Talent eventually rises to the top. You saw that with Wilson. You're seeing that now with Harrison. Great week 1. I get it, the Saints stink. But they're playing the Panthers this week. I know I'd mentioned Horn a little bit. But Marvin Harrison, I think there's a difference there. I saw it, right? I think it's like the gleam in his eyes. He's locked in with Kyler Murray to make some plays. The Cardinals have a very favorable schedule, by the way. So Harrison should be keeping attacking this, and Trey McBride and him should be going off in this game against the Panthers. So I feel really good. I think both of these guys are now top 12 plays this week.
Yeah, I'm more confident in Wilson, who I have at wide receiver 9. I have Marvin Harrison at 12. My only thing with the Panthers is I just expect the Cardinals to be able to run all over them, right? And Marvin Harrison still did only see 6 targets. We want that to increase, but I think both of these guys are very good plays this week. We're going to continue into our wide receiver rankings, getting into those wide receiver 2s, your 12 through 24-ish type wide receivers. We'll get to that right after we hear from a couple of our sponsors.
All right, this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else. That's as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same intention to how we craft every model. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but. From smooth handling to intuitive controls with all-wheel drive standard to every crossover SUV, you can also drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat out every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved.
This episode is also brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. It's time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. This grape, ginger, and lime flavored shot brings the iconic taste of a golf course favorite to a non-alcoholic boost. Perfect for sinking birdies or making great memories with friends. It's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Whether you're out on the course or just need a little extra push to power through your day, 5 Hour Energy Transfusion delivers the clubhouse flavor you love without ever leaving the green. Golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors. The grape, ginger, lime flavor of 5 Hour Energy Transfusion gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go to without leaving the course or chasing down the beverage cart. Now you can amp up the fun even more. Just buy, snap, and enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for two to any golf tournament in the USA. Tee up that trip. Visit 5hourenergy.com for full rules and entry. No purchase necessary. Excludes the Masters tournament. Ends October 31st, 2025. All right, let's keep getting into our wide receiver rankings. And let's talk about this Chargers wide receiver group, because last week, Ladd McConkey was outshined by Keenan Allen and Quentin Johnston in fantasy points, but he was still heavily involved and had a solid enough game. 9 targets, 6 receptions, 74 yards for Ladd McConkey. We're both staying strong with him and still ranking him the highest among this group. You have McConkey all the way at wide receiver 10. I have him at wide receiver 13. But I also really like Keenan Allen this week, and I think he should be in people's lineups. He's at wide receiver 23 for me and wide receiver 29. But how are you feeling about this group, and do you think the targets will kind of stay this way where it's these 3 top guys and they're all kind of relevant?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is going to be either the Chargers keep throwing this much with Justin Herbert, volume. I mean, they were trailing a little bit with the Chiefs, and so that allowed Justin Herbert to really accelerate the targets for the guy that we know is fluky. I mean, it's very obvious, is Quentin Johnston. He's a big play guy. He's going to get them occasionally. But the bread and butter of this passing game is certainly Ladd McConkey and Keenan Allen. It's almost like they have 2 versatile slots who they can put on the outside and make catches get open. So I think the volume is going to channel with a lot of these guys. Now, I don't know if you're going to get a lot of big plays from these guys, especially Keenan Allen. He might need the touchdown to really come through for you, but he's going to have good volume, where I think McConkey will get some of those big plays and scores coming his way. So, again, until further notice, I think you look at Ladd McConkey, borderline wide receiver 1-2. You look at Keenan Allen, borderline wide receiver 2-3 every week until we get proved otherwise. And here against the Raiders, I don't think the evidence is going to give us any reason to sit these guys going forward.
Yeah, I think both McConkey and Keenan Allen need to be in your lineups. And if you want to get risky with Johnson, just know that's what it is. It's risky. Like, he's not going to be scoring 2 touchdowns a game, and he's not always going to have those big plays. But obviously he offers that, and it does seem like they have that connection going. But another wide receiver duo that we like both of them this week, it's Mike Evans and it's Emeka Egbuka. Egbuka had the 2 touchdowns last week. Mike Evans was pretty quiet, but still had 8 targets. Like, he's going to get his targets, and he's going to have these lower games and then boom games, right? If you have Mike Evans, you plug him in every single week, because that's what you have him for, is to win you those weeks when he goes off. So I have Mike Evans at 16. You have him at 14. I have Egbuka at 19, and you have him at 18. So pretty similar here. And we're saying play both of these guys. There was news that Chris Godwin's back at practice, but he will not be playing in the game this weekend.
Yeah, I think you look at the way that Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams operated against the Texans' pass defense, you got to feel a little bit more confident. It's much like, again, a little bit different type of receivers, much like the Chargers we just talked about. I think until further notice, I think Mike Evans and Emeka Egbuka have to be in their lineup, because again, Evans will get his. We know he always gets his, right? And it's going to come. And again, there are some issues that this secondary had last week, so I think you'll have an opportunity. I think Baker Mayfield's going to have to put the ball up. It could lead did some disaster as well with the turnovers and the pressure and all that with Tristan Wirfs not in there, but I think he's going to have to chuck it. So I think this is a game where both teams are throwing quite a bit. And again, we hope Baker Mayfield doesn't get too roughed up in this one by that pass rush. So really, you can say the same for CJ Stroud on the other side. But I would say I like Ibuka until we see otherwise. I mean, he's going to be very much involved, at least we know through Godwin being out.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one guy I feel more confident in to bounce back than you do, it's Tyreek Hill in week 2 at home against the Patriots. I have him as my wide receiver 17. You have him at wide receiver 31. Listen, I know the Dolphins looked like the worst team in the NFL last week, right? On the road. I do expect them to go back home and look perfectly fine. The Dolphins have always been so much better at home than on the road, but they averaged 30 points per game at home with Tua starting since the 2023 season. And obviously on the road, that's way worse. But at home, 270 passing yards per game. Tua averages 2 passing touchdowns per game. He averages at home since 2023. So I just think Tua is going to look better. This offense is going to look better. And Tyreek Hill is just going to come up with 1 or 2 big plays, but still led the team in targets, only 4 receptions, 40 yards. But I think it comes through at home. And as long as the Dolphins are playing at home, I'm fine with playing their weapons.
Yeah, I'm probably a little harsh on Tua I'm not harsh on Tua. I'm definitely harsh on Tyreek Hill. But again, Tyreek Hill doesn't have a Tyreek problem. He has a quarterback problem right now. I mean, it was an atrocious performance. It's not like the Colts are world-beating defense. I mean, Tua just looked terrible. He couldn't push the ball anywhere. I mean, there were no tight ends anymore, right? There was no Johnny Smith to bail him out. Jen Waddle was disappearing from the game plan. It was basically Devin Achane. If he got stuffed in the running game, he had to throw to him, and that's how they had to move the ball. So I just don't have a lot of confidence right now. I hate to say, I mean, I'm just like the other situation. We're getting Jackson Dart and Russell Wilson. Maybe we need some Zach Wilson here to just chuck it up to Tyreek Hill and take a shot. So Tua is too calculated, and I don't know what this beef is too. It seems like there's something weird that between Tua and Tyreek that they have to diffuse this bomb. Tua has to talk about it every week. I don't know if that's coming into it. I mean, he's a hard-headed guy, so I don't know if that would carry over. But I need to see it to believe it that Tyreek can be back in this offense, because this offense really picked up where it left off last season in week 1. It was very compressed. You didn't see a lot of impressive throws from Tua. So look, I don't think he's unlocking it, but again, I'm going to be really worried if this team just flops at home against the Patriots.
And if they do, it might be the end of Mike McDaniel, and we might be seeing
some
but it could be over real quick for this team if they lose at home against the Patriots. It's not going to be pretty. Now, what are we doing? I know it's a Thursday night game, so hopefully you guys listen to it before then. But what are we doing with the Commanders wide receivers? Because Deebo Samuel dominated in week 1 with the 10 targets and dominated the work, I should say, in the wide receiver group. While Terry McLaurin only saw 4 targets, 2 receptions, 27 yards, started slowly after holding out all summer. I still have Deebo Samuel ranked ahead of Terry McLaurin for this week. I have Deebo Samuel at 20, Terry McLaurin down at wide receiver 29. And you're kind of similar here with Deebo Samuel, but you have them back to back at 24 with Terry McLaurin at 25. So are you starting both of them this week? I feel comfortable starting Deebo Samuel. I still am going to be worried about Terry McLaurin, though, in a tough matchup against the Packers.
Yeah, Terry McLaurin, he's a big play guy, right? And you need some time to throw downfield. And you got Micah Parsons on the other side. So what you could see is Jaden Daniels take off and run. He could throw it off to Deebo. He could dump it off to Eckler and Ertz, his guys underneath, right? That's what you could see a lot from. And remember last year, they were also slow in getting the deep ball going with McLaurin. You were like, when was that going to happen? Then he kind of saved himself, as we've talked about a lot, with that touchdown total, right? There were some games where he disappeared as the overall big play person on this team, but he helped himself with several multiple touchdown games. So I don't know what to think about McLaurin. Again, I think this is the type of receiver we're going to get. I think having a reliable number 2 with Deebo kind of throws things off a little bit, where they don't have to force it to McLaurin in certain games. So again, we need to watch this carefully. Again, if he struggles against the Packers, we might have to drop him down to more consistent wide receiver 3. And if Samuel goes off, he might be the wide receiver 2 of choice here going forward for Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, it's going to be really eye-opening tonight to see if Terry McLaurin can get more involved in the game. That's for sure. Now, we both like DK Metcalf this week in a revenge game against the Seahawks. I have him wide receiver 15. You have him at 19. Cortland Sutton, we're pretty similar on. You have him at 17. So really like him this week against the Colts, and I have him at wide receiver 22. So that's kind of rounds out our wide receiver twos here. If you have Zay Flowers, you can still play him against the Browns. I'm expecting a little bit worse of a game from him this week, but you still are holding tight on him at wide receiver 20. We will get to the rest of our wide receiver rankings to close out today's show right after a quick break.
This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL season is here into week 2, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Again, FanDuel makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keep an eye on your fantasy lineup to see how all those players are doing. I love using FanDuel because it's however you like to bet, player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action folds. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app today and now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet and take advantage of that bonus offer. All right, Michelle, time to close the show. Look at the back end of our wide receiver rankings here for week 2. Now, we have a quarterback change already. Not one that we wanted, not that we knew about, because it was an injury-based. So Brock Purdy hurt his toe. He's going to miss 2 to 5 weeks, it looks like. So we know for sure Mac Jones is going to be starting for the 49ers. Yes, Mac Jones is on the 49ers. He's their new backup quarterback, replacing Josh Dobbs. So now he will get the start here this week. It's a good matchup in New Orleans. So we want to get excited about it, but George Kittle's out. Does this mean it's Ricky Pearsall time one more time? I mean, there's nobody else there. They had to go bring back Kendrick Bourne this week. Their tight ends are led by Luke Farrell. So I don't know what you're going to get here from Mac Jones, but I think you're going to have a lot of McCaffrey, but are we going to get a lot of Pearsall as well?
I think we get a lot of Pearsall because he's necessary, right? And Pearsall had a great week 1 with his 7 targets, 108 receiving yards. He should have had a touchdown, but Tyreek Woolen is the tallest man to ever exist. So he was able to get his hand in there. But I mean, we're still saying you should be playing Pearsall. You have him at wide receiver 22. I'm at wide receiver 25. There's no one else to target. So yeah, it's not going to be as pretty of targets as he gets from Purdy, but last year when he had to catch passes from Josh Dobbs in week 18, he had a good fantasy day with 69 yards and a touchdown. Mac Jones last year with the Jaguars. I mean, that's when Brian Thomas Jr. dominated, right? It wasn't with Trevor Lawrence, which is also a worry after his week 1 performance. But, Mac Jones was able to do it last year with the Jaguars. So I think we can still trust Ricky Pearsall, and Christian McCaffrey, obviously, is definitely going to get so much of the work in this game. Now, Jacoby Myers, let's talk about him because we liked him as a sleeper pick in drafts this offseason. Great first game, led the team in targets, 10 targets, 8 receptions, 97 yards. So just another really solid fantasy day from him after he was a wide receiver 23 in fantasy last year. He was a wide receiver 16 on the week in week 1. Chargers are middle of the pack against fantasy wide receivers since the start of last year. I think Jacoby Myers is a really solid flex play or wide receiver 2 play moving forward.
Yeah, the big reason we liked him going into the season where we're looking at this offense, we said, hey, it's Brock Bowers, then who? And then they brought in Amari Cooper for a very brief time before he re-retired or whatever you want to call it. So that was making us worry. Oh, are they worried about Myers? Remember, he was on the trade block before this season, and now they're like, oh yeah, he's our number 2. He's locked in. And I think this is a good offense for him. I think Chip Kelly is realizing that you can move him all over. He's a very tough receiver. Maybe he was a little extra motivated last week, right, with Josh McDaniels and the Patriots on the other side in his return to New England. So that was there. But he still is a tricky matchup, I think, for the Chargers because, again, he just gets open. He runs good routes. And that's why the quarterback, Geno Smith, trusts him. And, look, he's basically the position Geno likes to throw to, like big slots in the middle of the field, trying to work that. And that's why we had Brock Bowers had immediate success as well. So Geno, middle of the field guy, works very well here for Myers' skill set.
Yeah, it looks like this offense is going to run through Myers and Bowers in the passing game. And that's what we love, right? When it's just the two guys that get the majority of the targets. Now, talking about a guy who got an absurd amount of targets last week was Hollywood Brown with 16 targets. We'll see if Xavier Worthy can get back soon. Luckily, it was just a dislocated shoulder and nothing more than that. But if Xavier Worthy is out, right, again this week against the Eagles, we fully expect the Eagles to be able to put up points against the Chiefs, meaning Mahomes will have to throw often. It was Hollywood Brown's show last week and really nobody else. Even Travis Kelce, when they needed him, only got 4 targets, right? 2 receptions. Juju second on the team with 5 targets. So are you playing Hollywood Brown this week and trusting that in a pretty hard matchup against the Eagles?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that the Chiefs and Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes need to do, find a way to get Hollywood Brown on Adoree Jackson. Do it, because that's the key to this entire thing. He's facing some Quinion Mitchell, or is he playing inside with Cooper DeJean? I think they'll try to contain Hollywood Brown, but you also have to worry about Kelce, right? I mean, I know they do have Zach Bond, who's very good in coverage at linebacker, but you do have to kind of worry about those intermediate targets. So again, the key is going to be to stretch the field with Hollywood, with his speed. Again, he was showing good chemistry, and we just never got it going with Mahomes because he wasn't healthy. But there was something developing that was really good, and he's very good at being the deep threat. Again, the question is, Jackson was a speed guy, right? But now he just is a speed guy who gets lost very easily in coverage. So that's the biggest thing. So I like that matchup whenever it happens, and that really makes you want to play around. And look, someone's got to catch this ball here. If Worthy's out, Rice is out, it can't be just Juju Smith-Schuster and Kelce, right? They need Hollywood Brown. So again, this game should also be very high scoring, as we know, the Super Bowl and the previous matchups with these teams.
Now, 2 guys that we are liking for this week, Jameson Williams, you have at wide receiver 23. And then I have Jameson Williams at wide receiver 27 and Tetairoa McMillan against the Cardinals. I have him at wide receiver 28. You have him at wide receiver 26. McMillan in his first ever game in the NFL. I mean, we can't ask for a ton more, right? 9 targets, 5 receptions, 68 yards. Wasn't a huge day, but I still think like that target share is promising, and hopefully we get more scoring from the Panthers offense this week. And then with Jameson Williams, yeah, it was a terrible week 1 performance, just 4 receptions, 23 yards. But the same way we expect this Lions offense to bounce back at home in an easier matchup against the Bears. I'm expecting, Amon-Ra St. Brown to bounce back, Jameson Williams to bounce back, and then both to have really good games. So plug in both of these guys with confidence.
Yeah, I mean, McMillan, again, I am a kind of broken record on this one. It's not a McMillan problem. It's a Bryce Young problem. So, but again, we factor all these in, right? I mean, they showed good chemistry. I think it'll bounce back here against the Cardinals. I mean, look, the Jaguars are playing a little bit over their head. I think this game, the Cardinals defense is better than a lot of people think in the way it plays, but I still think the volume of McMillan is going to outweigh that a little bit. And then Jameson Williams, I think they want to grease that wheel, right? Look for the big plays in the past game they did not get against the Packers. And I think that's part of it with Jameson Williams.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Now, to end today's show, I want you to order these guys and most wanting to plug them into your starting roster or not. And these all 3 guys are big play machines, but could disappoint you pretty greatly. It's George Pickens against the Giants, Keon Coleman against the Jets, or Quentin Johnston against the Raiders. How would you order those 3 guys?
Yeah, I don't really want to force myself to play any of these, but I can't really look at Keon Coleman, just the potential of Sauce Gardner. After Keon's big game, I don't want to do that. Sauce played really well in week 1. So he's out in this situation. When I look at Quentin Johnston, I think he's also out. Like, kind of big play, fluky game for him. We know he'll disappear and not do anything for like multiple weeks. So I think George Pickens is going to get the targets. I don't know if he'll get going. You know how it is. You were a Steelers fan last year when you had to see Pickens. He's a roller coaster. You don't know what you're going to get from one week to the next. Let's just hope. One play. Just get one 80-yard bomb against the Giants and you'll be happy. But that's maybe what you're depending on week to week with Pickens. But he certainly has more upside than those other 2 guys.
Yeah, I think I'm going with Keon Coleman. I know that like so much of that production came because they needed to throw a ton against the Ravens, but the Jets offense looked good in week 1. The Bills defense did not. So hopefully they'll be able to put some points on the board. And Calvin Austin was randomly able to beat the Jets deep a couple times and make those contested catches against them. And I think Coleman's the much better receiver in that area than Calvin Austin. So I would lean Keon Coleman against the Jets, then Pickens against the Giants, and then Johnston last against the Raiders. But that will be it for today's episode. I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen of the day. The NFL season is finally here. So for your second listen, get a double dose of the Locked On NFL podcast. Tyler, the madman Roland, gives you a shot of espresso to start your football day, while Tony Wiggins takes you into the barbershop for the smoothest breakdowns to end the day. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye, y'all.